Rather than the end of segregation, the Brown decision marked the beginning of the transitional period known as the Civil Rights Movement. Whereas the educational battles have been run by brilliant NAACP attorneys fighting in the courts, the fight for broader civil rights was led not only by attorneys, but by the preachers and fearless women. The battles were fought not only in the courts, but in the streets and in Congress, in Birmingham and in Selma. Each of the names on this slide is an incredible biography of people with courage and bravery who saw beyond themselves and brought about fundamental change in this country. The 1960s were in many ways like the 1860s and the 1870s. Laws that had been adopted to promote equality during that time were eroded by a conservative Supreme Court. In the mid-20th century, the Supreme Court was under Earl Warren, and it began to reverse the court's philosophy. Congress and the President joined in enacting new legislation to update civil rights laws almost 100 years after the earlier effort. The list of court cases is extraordinarily long. These are only four of many. At 1956 and 1962 laws addressed transportation, of which there were numerous court cases. Gill versus Broder is the Rosa Parks case. The 1964 case is really important because it upheld the Civil Rights Act. Remember, the Supreme Court, back in the Plessy era, overturned the Civil Rights Act that had been adopted in 1875. And the 1967 Loving versus Virginia case is one, but many cases coming out of Virginia. In fact, more civil rights cases were filed in Virginia than any other state. This one invalidated state laws prohibiting interracial marriage. In addition to the court case, acts by Congress were extensive and critical. 1964 eliminated the poll tax, but by far the most far-reaching legislation adopted during this period was the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which addressed discrimination in virtually every area of society. 1965 reinforced the voting rights, and in 1968 we finally have the Fair Housing Act. Together, this forms a body of laws that should have changed the direction in this country. In the midst of this legislative advancement, however, social order was disruptive for multiple reasons in multiple cities. Harlem, 1964, Watts, 1965, Detroit, Newark, Plainfield, Minneapolis, 1967, Washington, 1968. Dr. King was in Memphis to march on behalf of the striking Memphis sanitation workers. But at 6:05 p.m. on Thursday, April 4, 1968, he was shot while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Hotel. News of his assassination prompted outbreaks of racial violence, resulting in more than 40 deaths nationwide and extensive property damage in over 100 American cities. James Earl Ray, a 40-year-old escaped fugitive, later confessed to the crime and was sentenced to a 99-year prison term. But a powerful voice and a powerful leader was lost. On January 20, 1969, Lyndon Johnson left office with the swearing-in of Richard Nixon. In June 1969, Earl Warren retired as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The unique combination of King, Johnson, and Warren took the nation where it had not been in 100 years. By the summer of 1969, they were all gone, and so was the civil rights era of transition.